Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the story of King Arthur and his knights, written and illustrated by Howard Pyle. Chapter 5th. How King Arthur overcame the enemies of King Leodegrance, and how his royalty was proclaimed. Now, when the next day had come, the Duke of North Umber and his 6 knights companion appeared upon the field in front of the castle of Cameliard, as he had duly declared that he and they would do. And those 7 champions appeared in very great estate, for in front of them there rode 7 heralds with trumpets and tabards, and behind them there rode 7 esquires, each esquire bearing the spear, the shield, the crest, and the banneret of the knight who was his lord and master. And the 7 heralds blew their trumpets so exceedingly loud that the sound thereof penetrated unto the utmost parts of Cameliard, so that the people came running from everywhere. And while the heralds blew their trumpets, the 7 esquires shouted and waved their spears and the bannerets. So those 7 knights rode in such proud estate that those who looked upon them had hardly ever beheld such a splendid presentment of chivalry. So they paraded up and down that field 3 times for its entire length, and meantime a great crowd of people, called thither by the blowing of the heralds' trumpets, stood upon the walls and gazed therefrom at that noble spectacle. And all the court of King Rience came and stood upon the plain in front of the king's pavilion, and they shouted and cheered the Duke of North Umber and his 6 knights companion. Meanwhile, King Leodegrance of Cameliard was so cast down with trouble and shame that he did not choose to show his face, but hid himself away from all his court. Nor would he permit anyone for to come into his presence at that time. Nevertheless, the Lady Guinevere, with sundry of her damsels, went unto the king's closet where he was, and knocked upon the door thereof. And when the king denied her to come in to him, she spake to him through the door, giving him words of good cheer, saying, My lord king and father, I prithee for to look up, and to take good cheer unto thyself, for I do assure thee that there is one who hath our cause in his hands, and that one is certes a very glorious champion, and he shall assuredly come by and by ere this day is done, and when he cometh, he shall certainly overthrow our enemies. But King Leodegrance opened not the door, but he said,
My daughter, that which thou sayest for to comfort me, for there is no other help for me in this time of trouble, only God, his good strong help and grace.
And she said,
Nay, I say that which is the truth, and the help that God shall send unto thee, he shall certainly send through a worthy champion, who at this moment hath our cause in his hand.
So spake the Lady Guinevere, so that whilst King Leodegrance came not forth, yet he was greatly comforted at that which she had said to him. Thus passed all that morning, and a part of the afternoon, and yet no one appeared for to take up that challenge which the 7 knights had declared. But whilst the sun was yet 3 or 4 hours high, there suddenly appeared at a great distance a cloud of dust. And in that cloud of dust there presently appeared 5 knights, riding at great speed thitherward. And when these had come nigh unto the walls, lo, the people beheld that he who rode foremost of all was that same white champion who had aforetime overthrown the Duke of North Umber. Moreover, they perceived that the 4 knights who rode with that white champion were very famous knights, and of great prowess and glory of arms. For the one was Sir Gawain, and the other was Sir Ewain, and the other was Sir Geraint, and the other was Sir Pelleas. For the people of the castle and the town knew these 4 knights, because they had dwelt for 2 days at Cameliard, and they were of such exceeding renown that folk crowded from far and near for to look upon them whenever they appeared for to walk abroad. So when the people upon the walls beheld who those knights were, and when they perceived that white champion who had aforetime brought them such exceeding honour, they shouted aloud for the 2nd time with a voice mightier than that which they had shouted the 1st time. Now King Leodegrance heard the people shouting, whereupon the hope awoke of a sudden within him. So he straightway came forth with all speed for to see what was ado, and there he beheld those 5 noble champions about to enter into the field below the castle walls. And the Lady Guinevere also heard the shouting, and she came forth likewise, and behold, there was that white champion and those 4 other knights. So when she beheld that white knight and his 4 companions at arms, her heart was like to break within her for pure joy and gladness, wherefore she wept for the passion thereof, and laughed the whiles she wept. And she waved her kerchief unto those 5 noble lords, and kissed her hand unto them, and the 5 knights saluted her as they rode past her and into the field. Now when the Duke of Northumber was made aware that those 5 knights had come against him and his knights companion for to take up his challenge, he straightway came forth from his pavilion and mounted his horse. And his knights companions came forth and mounted their horses, and he and they went forth for to meet those who had come against them. And when the Duke of Northumber had come nigh enough, he perceived that the chiefest of those 5 knights was the white champion who had aforetime overthrown him. Wherefore he said unto that white champion, Sir Knight, I have once before condescended unto thee, who art altogether unknown to me, or to anybody else that is here. For without inquiring concerning thy quality, I ran a course with thee, and lo, by the chance of arms, thou didst overthrow me. Now this quarrel is more serious than that, wherefore I and my companions at arms will not run a course with thee and thy companions, nor will we fight with thee until I first know what is the quality of him against whom I contend. Wherefore I bid thee presently declare thyself, who thou art, and what is thy condition. Then Sir Gawain opened the umbril of his helmet, and he said, Sir Knight, behold my face, and know that I am Sir Gawain, the son of King Lot. Wherefore thou mayst perceive that my condition and estate are even better than thine own. Now I do declare unto thee that yonder white knight is of such a quality that he condescends unto thee when he doeth combat with thee, and that thou dost not condescend unto him. Ho, Sir Gawain, quoth the Duke of Northumber, what thou sayest is a very strange thing, for indeed there are few in this world who are so exalted that they may condescend unto me. Nevertheless, since thou dost avouch for him, I may not gainsay that which thou sayest. Yet there is still another reason why we may not yet fight with thee. For behold, we are 7 well-appointed and famous knights, and ye are but 5. So consider how unequal are our forces, and that you stand in great peril in undertaking so dangerous an encounter. Then Sir Gawain smiled right grimly upon the Duke of Northumber. Gramercy for thy compassion, and for thy tenderness, which thou showeth concerning our safety, so Duke, quoth he. But nevertheless, thou mayst leave that matter unto us, with entire content of spirit upon thy part, for I consider that the peril in which ye 7 stand is fully equal to our peril. Moreover, wert thou other than a belted knight, a simple man might suppose that thou wert more careful of thine own safety in this matter than thou art of ours. Now at these words, the countenance of the Duke of Northumber became altogether covered with red, for he wist that he had indeed no great desire for this battle, wherefore he was ashamed because of the words which Sir Gawain spake to him. So each knight closed his helm, and all turned their horses, and the one party rode unto one end of the field, and the other party rode to the other end of the field, and there each took stand in the place assigned unto them. And they arranged themselves thus. In the middle was King Arthur, and upon either hand were 2 knights, and in the middle was the Duke of Northumber, and upon either hand were 3 knights. So when they had thus arrayed themselves, they dressed their spears and their shields, and made them altogether ready for the onset. Then King Arthur and Duke Mordaunt each shouted loud, and the one party hurled upon the other party with such violence that the ground shook and thundered beneath the hoofs of the horses, and the clouds of dust rose up against the heavens. And so they met in the middle of the field with an uproar of such dreadful violence that one might have heard the crashing thereof for the distance of more than a mile away. And when the one party had passed the other, and the dust of the encounter had risen, lo, 3 of the 7 had been overthrown, and not 1 of the 5 had lost his seat. And one of those who had been overthrown was Duke Mordaunt of Northumber, and behold, he never more arose again from the ground whereon he lay. For King Arthur had directed his spear into the very midst of his defences, and the spear had held, wherefore the point thereof had pierced the shield of the Duke of Northumber, and had pierced his body armour, since so violent was the stroke that the Duke of Northumber had been lifted entirely out of his saddle, and had been cast a full spear's length behind the crupper of his horse. Thus died that wicked man, for as King Arthur drave past him, the evil soul of him quitted his body with a weak noise like to the squeaking of a bat, and the world was well rid of him. Now when King Arthur turned him about at the end of the course, and beheld that there were but 4 knights left upon their horses, of all those 7 against whom he and his companions had driven, he uplifted his spear, and drew rein upon his horse, and bespake his knights in this wise: Messiahs, I am aweary of all this coil and quarrelling, and do not care to fight any more today. So go ye straight away, and engage these knights in battle. As for me, I will abide here, and witness your adventure. Lord, said they, we will do our endeavour as thou dost command. So those 4 good knights did as he commanded, and they went forth straightway against those other 4, much encouraged that their king looked upon their endeavour. And King Arthur sat with the butt of his spear resting upon his instep, and looked upon the field with great content of spirit and a steadfast countenance. As for those 4 knights companion that remained of the Duke of Northumber's party, they came not forth to this second encounter with so much readiness of spirit as they had done aforetime, for they were now well aware of how great was the excellent prowess of those other knights, and they beheld that their enemies came forth to this second encounter very fiercely, and with great valour and readiness of spirit. Wherefore their hearts melted away without them, with doubt and anxiety as to the outcome of this second encounter. Nevertheless they prepared themselves with such resolve as might be, and came forth as they were called upon to do. Then Sir Gawain drave straight up to the foremost knight, who was a very well-known champion, hight Sir Dinador of Montcalm, and when he had come sufficiently nigh to him, he lifted himself up in his stirrups, and he smote Sir Dinador so fierce a blow that he cleft the shield of that knight asunder, and he cleft his helmet, and a part of the blade of his sword brake away, and remained therein. And when Sir Dinador felt that blow, his brains swam like water, and he was fain to catch the horn of his saddle for to save himself from falling therefrom. Then a great terror straightway fell upon him, so that he drew rein violently to one side. So he fled away from that place, with the terror of death hanging above him, like to a black cloud of smoke. And when his companions beheld that stroke that Sir Gawain delivered, and when they beheld Sir Dinador flee away from before them, they also drew rein to one side, and fled away with all speed, pursued with an entire terror of their enemies. And Sir Gawain and Sir Ewain and Sir Geraint and Sir Pelleas pursued them as they fled. And they chased them straight through the court of King Rience, so that the knights and nobles of that court scattered hither and thither like chaff at their coming. And they chased those fleeing knights in among the pavilions of King Rience's court, and no man stayed them. And when they had chased those knights entirely away, they returned to that place where King Arthur still held his station, steadfastly awaiting them. Now when the people of Cameliard beheld the overthrow of their enemies, and when they beheld how those enemies fled away from before the faces of their champions, they shouted with might and main, and made great acclaim. Nor did they stint their loud shouting when those 4 knights returned from pursuing their enemies, and came back unto the white champion again. And still more did they give acclaim when those 5 knights rode across the drawbridge, and into the gateway of the town, and into the town. Thus ended the great bout at arms, which was one of the most famous in all the history of chivalry of King Arthur's court. Now when King Arthur had thus accomplished his purpose, and when he had come into the town again, he went unto that merchant of whom he had obtained the armour that he wore, and he delivered that armour back to him again, and he said, Tomorrow day, Sir Merchant, I shall send thee 2 bags of gold for to rent of that armour which thou didst let me have. To this the merchant said,
Lord, it is not needed that thou shouldst recompense me for that armour, for thou hast done great honour to Cameliard by thy prowess.
But King Arthur said, Have done, Sir Merchant, nor must thou forbid what I say. Wherefore take thou that which I send unto thee. Thereupon he went his way, and having set his cap of disguise upon his head, he came back into the Lady Guinevere's gardens again. Now when the next morning had come, the people of Cameliard looked forth, and lo, King Rience had departed entirely away from before the castle. For that night he had struck his pavilions, and had withdrawn his court, and had gone away from that place where he and his people had sat down for 5 days past. And with him he had taken the body of the Duke of Northumber, conveying it away in a litter surrounded by many lighted candles, and uplifted by a peculiar pomp of ceremony. But when the people of Cameliard beheld that he was gone, they were exceedingly rejoiced, and made merry, and shouted and sang and laughed, for they wist not how deeply enraged King Rience was against them. For his enmity, aforetime toward King Leodegrance, was but as a small flame when compared unto the anger that now possessed him. Now that morning Lady Guinevere walked into her garden, and with her walked Sir Gawain and Sir Ewain, and lo, there she beheld the gardener's boy again. Then she laughed aloud, and she said unto those two knights, Messires, behold, yonder is the gardener's boy, who weareth his cap continually, because he hath an ugly place upon his head. Then those two knights, knowing who that gardener's boy was, were exceedingly abashed at her speech, and wist not what to say, or whither to look. And Sir Gawain spake aside unto Sir Ewain, and quoth he, For heaven, that lady knoweth not what manner of man is yonder gardener's boy, for an she did, she would be more sparing of her speech. And the Lady Guinevere heard Sir Gawain that he spoke, but she did not hear his words. So she turned unto Sir Gawain, and she said, Sir Gawain, haply it doth affront thee that that gardener's boy should wear his cap before us, and maybe thou wilt go and take it off from his head, as thou didst offer to do 2 or 3 days since. And Sir Gawain said, Peace, lady, thou knowest not what thou sayest. Yonder gardener's boy could more easily take my head from off my shoulders than I could take his cap from off his head. At this the Lady Guinevere made open laughter, but in her heart she secretly pondered that saying, and greatly marvelled what Sir Gawain meant thereby. Now about noon of that day there came an herald from King Rience of North Wales, and he appeared boldly before King Leodegrance, where the king sat in his hall, with a number of his people about him. And the herald said, My lord king, my master, King Rience of North Wales, is greatly displeased with thee, for thou didst set certain knights upon Duke Mordaunt of Northumber, and those knights have slain that excellent nobleman, who was close kin unto King Rience. Moreover, thou hast made no reply to those demands that my master, King Rience, hath made touching the delivery unto him of certain lands and castles bordering upon North Wales. Wherefore, my master is affronted with thee beyond measure. So my master, King Rience, bids me to set forth to thee 2 conditions, and the conditions are thus. Firstly, that thou dost immediately deliver unto his hands that white knight who slew the Duke of Northumber, and secondly, that thou makest immediate promise that those lands in question shall be presently delivered unto King Rience. Then King Leodegrance arose from where he sat, and spake to that herald with great dignity of demeanour. Sir Herald, quoth he, the demands that King Rience make upon me pass all bounds for insolence. That death which the Duke of Northumber suffered, he suffered because of his own pride and folly. Nor would I deliver that white knight into thy master's hands, even an I were able to do so. As for those lands that thy master demandeth of me, thou mayst tell King Rience that I will not deliver unto him of those lands so much as a single blade of grass, or a single grain of corn that groweth thereon. And the herald said, If so be that is thine answer, King Leodegrance, then I am bidden for to tell thee that my master, King Rience of North Wales, will presently come hither with an array of a great force of arms, and will take from thee by force those things which thou wilt not deliver unto him peacefully. Whereupon, so saying, he departed thence and went his way. Now after the herald had departed, King Leodegrance went into his closet, and when he had come there he sent, privily, for the Lady Guinevere. So the Lady Guinevere came to him where he was, and King Leodegrance said to her,
My daughter, it hath appeared that a knight clad all in white, and bearing no crest or device of any sort, hath twice come to our rescue, and hath overthrown our enemies. Now it is said by everybody that that knight is thine own particular champion, and I hear say that he wore thy necklace as a favour when he first went out against the Duke of Northumber. Now I prithee, daughter, tell me who that white champion is, and where he may be found.
Then the Lady Guinevere was overwhelmed with confusion, wherefore she looked away from her father's countenance, and she said, Verily, my lord, I know not who that knight may be. Then King Leodegrance spake very seriously to the Lady Guinevere, and he took her by the hand and said,
My daughter, thou art now of an age when thou must consider being mated unto a man who may duly cherish thee and protect thee from thine enemies. For lo, I grow apace in years, and may not hope to defend thee always from those perils that encompass one of our estate. Moreover, since King Arthur, who was a very great king indeed, hath brought peace unto this realm, all that noble court of chivalry which one time gathered about me has been scattered elsewhither, where greater adventures may be found than in my peaceful realm. Wherefore, as all the world hath seen this week past, I have now not one single knight whom I may depend upon to defend us in such times of peril as these, which now overshadow us. Now, my daughter, it doth appear to me that thou couldst not hope to find anyone who could so well safeguard thee as this white knight, for he doth indeed appear to be a champion of extraordinary prowess and strength. Wherefore it would be well if thou didst feel thyself to incline unto him, as he appeareth to incline unto thee.
Then the Lady Guinevere became all rosy red, as with a fire even unto her throat. And she laughed, albeit the tears overflowed her eyes and ran down upon her cheeks. So she wept, yet laughed in weeping, and she said unto King Leodegrance, My lord and father, and I give my liking unto any one in the manner thou speakest of, I will give it only unto the poor gardener's boy who digs in my garden. Then at these words the countenance of King Leodegrance became contracted with violent anger, and he cried out,
Lady, wouldst thou make a mock and a jest of my words?
Then the Lady Guinevere said, Indeed, my lord, I jest not, and I mock not. Moreover, I tell thee for verity that the same gardener's boy knoweth more concerning the white champion than anybody else in all of the world. Then King Leodegrance said,
What is this that thou tellest me?
And the Lady Guinevere said, Send for that gardener's boy, and thou shalt know. And King Leodegrance said,
Verily, there is more in this than I may at present understand.
So he called to him the chief of his pages, hight Dorisand, and he said to him,
Go, Dorisand, and bring hither the gardener's boy from the Lady Guinevere's garden.
So Dorisand, the page, went as King Leodegrance commanded, and in a little while he returned, bringing with him that gardener's boy. And with them came Sir Gawain, and Sir Ewain, and Sir Pelleas, and Sir Geraint, and those 4 lords stood over against the door, where they entered. But the gardener's boy came and stood beside the table where King Leodegrance sat. And the king lifted up his eyes, and looked upon the gardener's boy, and he said,
Ah! Wouldst thou wear thy cap in our presence?
Then the gardener's boy said, I cannot take off my cap. But the Lady Guinevere, who stood beside the chair of King Leodegrance, spake and said, I do beseech thee, Messire, for to take off thy cap unto my father. Whereupon the gardener's boy said, At thy bidding I will take it off. And so he took the cap from off his head, and King Leodegrance beheld his face, and knew him. And when he saw who it was who stood before him, he made a great outcry from pure amazement, and he said,
My lord and my king, what is this?
Thereupon he arose from where he sat, and he went and kneeled down upon the ground before King Arthur. And he set the palms of his hands together, and he put his hands within the hands of King Arthur, and King Arthur took the hands of King Leodegrance within his own. And King Leodegrance said,
my lord, is it then thou who hast done all these wonderful things?
Then King Arthur said, Yea, such as those things were, I have done them. And he stooped and kissed King Leodegrance upon the cheek, and lifted him up under his feet, and gave him words of good cheer. Now the Lady Guinevere, when she beheld these things that passed, was astonished beyond measure, and lo, she understood of a sudden all these things with amazing clearness. Wherefore a great fear fell upon her, so that she trembled exceedingly, and said unto herself, What things have I said unto this great king, and how I have made mock of him, and a jest of him before all those who were about me? And at that thought thereof, she set her hand upon her side, for to still the extreme disturbance of her heart. So whilst King Arthur and King Leodegrance gave to one another words of royal greeting and of compliment, she withdrew herself, and went and stood over against the window nigh to the corner of the wall. Then by and by King Arthur lifted up his eyes, and beheld her where she stood afar off. So he went straightway unto her, and he took her by the hand, and he said, Lady, what cheer? And she said, Lord, I am afeard of thy greatness. And he said, Nay, lady, rather it is I who am afeard of thee. For thy kind regard is dearer unto me than anything else in all the world. Else had I not served for these 12 days, as gardener's boy in thy garden, all for the sake of thy goodwill. And she said, Thou hast my goodwill, Lord. And he said, Have I thy goodwill in great measure? And she said, Yea, thou hast it in great measure. Then he stooped his head, and kissed her before all those who were there, and thus their troth was plighted. Then King Leodegrance was filled with such an exceeding joy that he wist not how to contain himself therefore. Now after these things there followed a war with King Rience of North Wales, for Sir Kay and Sir Ulfius had gathered together a great army as King Arthur had bidden them to do, so that when King Rience came against Cameliard, he was altogether routed, and his army dispersed, and he himself chased and outcast into his mountains. Then there was great rejoicing in Cameliard, for after his victory, King Arthur remained there for a while with an exceedingly splendid court of noble lords and of beautiful ladies, and there was feasting and jousting and many bouts of arms, famous, the like of which those parts had never beheld before. And King Arthur and the Lady Guinevere were altogether happy together. Now one day, whilst King Arthur sat at feast with King Leodegrance, they two being exceedingly expanded with cheerfulness, King Leodegrance said unto King Arthur,
My lord, what shall I offer thee for a dowry with my daughter, when thou takest her away from me for to be thy queen?
Then King Arthur turned to Merlin, who stood nigh to him, and said, Ah, Merlin, what shall I demand of my friend by way of that dowry? Unto him Merlin said,
My lord king, thy friend King Leodegrance hath one thing, the which, should he bestow it upon thee, will singularly increase the glory and renown of thy reign, so that the fame thereof shall never be forgotten.
And King Arthur said, I bid thee, Merlin, tell me, what is that thing? So Merlin said,
My lord king, I will tell thee a story. In the days of thy father, Uther Pendragon, I caused to be made for him a certain table in the shape of a ring, wherefore men called it the Round Table. Now at this table were seats for 50 men, and these seats were designed for the 50 knights who were the most worthy knights in all the world. These knights were of such a sort that whenever a worthy knight appeared, then his name appeared in letters of gold upon that seat that appertained unto him. And when that knight died, then would his name suddenly vanish from that seat which he had aforetime occupied. Now 49 of these seats, except one seat, were altogether alike, saving only one, that was set aside for the king himself, which same was elevated above the other seats, and was cunningly carved and inlaid with ivory and with gold. And the one seat was different from all the others, and it was called the Seat Perilous. For this seat was unlike the others both in its structure and its significance, for it was all cunningly inset with gold and silver of curious device, and it was covered with a canopy of satin embroidered with gold and silver. And it was altogether of a wonderful magnificence of appearance. And no name ever appeared upon this seat, for only one knight in all of the world could hope to sit therein with safety unto himself. For if any other dared to sit therein, either he would die a sudden and violent death within 3 days' time, or else a great misfortune would befall him. Hence that seat was called the Seat Perilous. Now in the days of King Uther Pendragon there sat 37 knights at the Round Table. And when King Uther Pendragon died, he gave the Round Table unto his friend King Leodegrance of Cameliard. And in the beginning of King Leodegrance's reign there sat 24 knights at the Round Table. But times have changed since then, and the glory of King Leodegrance's reign hath paled before the glory of thy reign, so that his noble court of knights have altogether quitted him. Wherefore there remaineth now not one name, saving only the name of King Leodegrance, upon all those 50 seats that surround the Round Table. So now that Round Table lieth beneath its pavilion altogether unused. Yet if King Leodegrance will give unto thee, my lord king, that Round Table for a dower with the Lady Guinevere, then will it lend unto thy reign its greatest glory, for in thy day every seat of that table shall be filled, even unto the Seat Perilous, and the fame of the knights who sit at it shall never be forgotten.
Ah, quoth King Arthur, that would indeed be a dower worthy of any king to have with his queen.
Then, King Leodegrance said, that dower shalt thou have with my daughter, and if it bring thee great glory, then shall thy glory be my glory, and thy renown shall be my renown. For if my glory shall wane, and thy glory shall increase, behold, is it not my child, thy wife?
And King Arthur said, Thou sayest well and wisely. Thus King Arthur became the master of that famous Round Table, and the Round Table was set up at Camelot, which some men now call Winchester, and by there gathered about it such an array of knights as the world had never beheld before that time, and which it shall never behold again. Such was the history of the beginning of the Round Table in King Arthur's reign.
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.